Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another Trustworthy Live. And do we have a special treat for you? We have invited today Kate North, who is a partner or principal in Global Workplace Analytics, to talk to us today about how she builds trust so quickly between organizations, volunteer organizations, client teams. I've known her for 20 years. Chris, talk a little bit about what you know about Kate.
Yeah, I've known Kate for about 8, 9 years. Kate was part of the community that first welcomed me when I moved from Australia to the US. And it was through this community that I really built a deep network and was able to build a lot of trust and feel like I belonged, like I was part of something. You know what I mean? I moved here by myself, and I'm really thankful to Kate because she is able to really make people feel seen and heard, invite people into her community. And one of her superpowers I love is that she listens deeply. And she speaks a little bit about that in our live that we've interviewed her on today. And I can't wait for all of you to also hear about that superpower.
So I promise you, if when you listen to this interview, you're going to learn hacks and tricks and things that she has really, used in order to build community, in order to inspire people to achieve amazing results. I have seen her start up organizations from scratch, and like this, people are following her, and you're going to learn how she does that. You're going to learn about how she works with executives and a diverse group of executives in order to get them to really articulate and then achieve their goals. There is so much here to learn on a personal and professional level. So I say, let's jump right in. Thank you for choosing Trustworthy Live. And let us know what you think after you hear, and let us know what you've tried and what you're going to try and how it works for you. Let's go.
Enjoy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Trustworthy Live. And are we excited about today? Today, we have our good friend and colleague, Kate North. Hi, Kate.
Hello.
Who I personally have known for, we just figured out, like 20 years, about 20 years. And I don't know how long, Chris, you've known Kate.
Very long time. I mean, it's part of the community that welcomed me to New York.
That's right. I remember the move.
And so we kind of all grew up together, and we've watched Kate build her career and her audience and her markets and places where she influences. In fact, I would call Kate a force multiplier. Like when she touches something, it explodes. So with that, Kate, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and then weave trust into it. What does trust have to do with where and how you've grown yourself as a professional, as a human being, and just actually as all of our friends and colleagues?
Oh, well, first of all, it is a pleasure and a delight to be joining you both. I love the work that you're doing with Trustworthy, and this is such a big topic. So I can't say that I'm masterful at it, but it's something that's top of mind for sure. To your first question, is that I am a workplace strategist, transformational change leader. I really love working with organizations and having them think through how they can evolve their workplace strategy, whether that's physical or digital. And over the past 30 years, I've done all sorts of things. I come from a design background, so the first portion of my career was really focused on the physical workplace and really helping to develop the profession of workplace strategy. There wasn't a term for it when I first started, and really looking at how can we better align their assets, their real estate, their workplace assets to their organizational goals. And that's where I love. And as we know, these are times of great change, and goals, and teams and executives really are shifting quite a bit as we try to keep up with the pace of change and what's next. So certainly over the course of the past 5 years, been focusing very much around hybrid work. We didn't even call that at the time, but really taking some of the work that I had done in my earlier career around helping organizations better understand how do leaders lead teams that they can't see. We call it distributed. Today it's called hybrid. And I've done a number of training courses and some of those kinds of things that we're bringing back to life now. So, I've done the strategy piece. I've certainly have done the physical component of it. I'd spent a couple of years at furniture manufacturers, wonderful times at Herman Miller and also at Hayworth, but also in the real estate segment. But what I found is that it was, especially about 20 years ago, there really wasn't a place to go for workplace expertise. It was still relatively new. So we had started a community of practice within CoreNet that later evolved we moved it into IFMA, the International Facility Management Association. So I'd also have to say one of my passions is building community. And that has been such a great opportunity. That's really kind of how I've been able to stay connected to the two of you and learn collectively around how do we create a new way of working and looking at things very holistically.
So Kate, that is a great introduction. I know I just interrupted you, but right at that moment, I need to say personally, I have never met anybody in my life that has an idea, puts the concept together, and then completely nails it, like is successful. You actually bring people along like no one else I know, whether it's building community, building client bases, building an organization. And when I think about that as living in my trustworthy world and think about our relationship and how far back it goes and what it is involved on a personal and professional level, there is so much trust there. People jump on your bandwagon because they trust you. What do you do? What is your secret sauce? Have you thought of that?
Well, I think that, first of all, I don't think that trust is automatic by any means. You've got to be really intentional, and it takes time to really build those types of teams. And I think it comes from, consistent behavior and trying to create a shared vision like we did with We. Our tagline is, changing the world one workplace at a time, and putting together people that are passionate and have expertise. So, as a leader, it was really around identifying the gift in our leadership team and then co-creating that shared vision and then creating enough space so we could try and test. I think what I love about We is that it is a group of passionate, smart, committed, out of the box thinkers that will try a number of different things. So it's very easy to innovate. And so I think by creating kind of a space that allows for that level for us to be able to test and learn and, move on, it helps bring people together. And I think what I've really enjoyed is just seeing the gifts that everybody brings. And with the volunteer leadership group, it's different than when you're managing and running global teams, right? These are people that are very busy, and it's all volunteer time. All of our time has been completely volunteer. So it's a different piece. It's doing it because you really want to contribute to that.
So I, as a volunteer in Workplace Evolutionary, so just to remind people, this is the group that deals with really out of the box evolutionary kind of thinking around workplace. I was one of your volunteers.
You were one.
And I had choice, right? I mean, I could have gotten involved in We, or I could have gotten involved in a lot of other different organizations. And I made a choice to go to We. And I'll name one thing that I noticed, but then I'd like you to maybe unpack it a little bit as to why why that community or how that community came together the way it did. I mean, it's great to talk about an innovative, creative group that comes together, that thinks out of the box, but there's something you did to create that. So why did I do it? I loved your passion. I felt like you heard me.
Mm.
And I felt that when you said consistent behavior, what I really saw was you did what you thought we should all do. You got your hands dirty, you showed up, and you didn't ask anything of us that you wouldn't do. So unpack that and take it down a path and elaborate on what else
Mm-hmm.
did you do that created an environment that all of us as leaders in this community wanted to be a part of what you were creating.
Well, thank you for all of that. I think that the first thing that happened is that when Chris Hood and I were invited in to create this, first of all, having Chris as a partner in crime was wonderful because he's such a lovely person, and he also loves to innovate and to create. So it was good to have a partner. And the thing that we did in even trying to come up with the name is just drop in and say, well, what is it that we're trying to do? And it was head and heart working together. And I knew I wanted the acronym WE. It's not the me, it's the we. And that's what we've really focused in on. And I think that energy draws people in to that piece. So the workplace evolutionaries, if you hear us go back and forth in this call about we are referring to the world workplace evolutionaries. But so the first piece was just really coming up with the ethos of that this is the collective, and that it also wanted it to be global, and that we wanted to be virtual, and we wanted to be able to do things that have meaning and that will help each other. So it didn't matter if you were a competitor or if you were an end user or a service provider. We just didn't want to have any barriers between that. We wanted people to show up exactly as who they were. So I think the key for me, Susan, was really, when we said, hey, come join us and you want to get involved, is that when somebody said, yeah, put me in. Like I remember when Chris says, yeah, I want to be a part of this. That is like, okay, let's spend some time. Let's figure out what your superpower is, and how can we really leverage that. And Chris led for many years the webinars that we did, interviewing different people and groups, and just collecting all that type of information from outside world and bringing it into we in such a thoughtful and mindful way, and expanded. So I think part of it is just really trying to see the gift of each person's skill. Like Susan, you were amazing at being able to kind of quickly develop the elevator pitch and showcase the value to potential sponsors. Better than anybody that I know. Who could say no to you? And it was your personal spark and passion, out of the box thinking, that really started bringing people in. So I think part of it is just, as a leader, is being very intuitive around what you're picking up through your employees or through your clients, of understanding from more of a presence level around who are you? What would you really like to bring forth into this world, and how might I help? And once you start to kind of see that, and you start to see some of these little networks connecting, and what if we did this and that, then be able to just allow the team to just take their ideas and run with it. Empower people, I think, is also a really important component. Put some guardrails around it. We're within a broader organization, but how do we allow for that type of space for people to be able to test ideas? And I think it's through testing, and sometimes they win, and sometimes they fail a little bit, or maybe we learn something from it. It was never judgment around it. There's just really the opportunity to create. So I think part of that is just as a empathy and trying to greet people where they are. Again, it's volunteer leadership. So different things come up in life. So if they've got more capacity or less, they've taken a new job, or they're pregnant, or they've moved, or what have you, allowing the space for people to figure out, given where they are, how they can still contribute. And I think you've just got to be aware of it.
Chris, can I ask one more question and then you jump in? I promise. Is that okay?
Yeah.
That's what I'd love for her to do. Okay, Kate, that is great. And now can you bridge that to your clients? Because at the end of the day, a lot of what you're doing is how you show up as a leader, from giving space and listening and finding out the superpower and really giving that, like, the opportunity to emerge. You're also incredibly successful in working with clients and in teams on a client basis. So bridge that to your, not just your volunteer organizational world, but your client world. And then we'll let Chris just take it
Yes, are
away.
you going to ask about that piece? I mean, do you want to ask us, say, well, how do these play out towards, or how do they evolve into your work that you're doing with clients?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how do you build trust with clients using the same? Is it same? Is it different? Yeah.
Okay. So so when you ask me about how do I bring this into the work that I do with my clients? Well, I think first of all is that I spend time with them doing the same thing, really trying to understand where they are today and what it is that they want to do in the future. What's the vision that they hold? And I spend time with the C-suite primarily, and initially it's just really getting clear on where they are as leaders individually, but also collectively. I listen deeply and bring forth a lot of the knowledge that I have about workplace. We educate them in a safe space so they can understand what the options might be for them. And then we try to really co-create the vision for themselves. And so they've got some skin in the game to that, and also a commitment and taking it, really bringing that forward. So whether or not that's around creating a new campus, if it's creating a work from home program, if it's around really thinking deeply about how they bring people back in and what does hybrid mean to them, it's still the same core, Susan. It's really about that deep listening, understanding, developing a vision, and then putting together the people and the process that allows for us to really begin to gain that momentum and to be able to help them see what this might be in a pretty fast way, so that everybody's so busy. How do we begin to show some kind of results or deliverables to where they can see that, how that's going to mean, what will that mean to their leaders? What will that mean to their teams? How do we bring forth some of these ideas? And so I really look at for some low-hanging fruit. I love getting engaged with my clients' in teams and their people, and really looking for ways in which we can have their voices come forward. Find those early adopters, promote them. Some of those kinds of things are really important. I think most importantly is that it's also, as I mentioned, you're delivering along the way, and that you're rolling up your sleeves, as you had indicated, to let them see that this is not just a consulting exercise, that there's some deep care around what we're doing. And the key thing that my partner, Kate Lister, and I have found is that by working with that leadership team to identify how they're going to measure the success and looking at those success metrics is really telling. And many of them have not really thought about how do we measure our workplace performance. They just see it as an asset. But they can see it so much more when we can tie it into engagement scores and some of those types of things and more of the experience. So I'd say that it's, Susan, bringing it in with my clients is being real. It's really greeting them where they are, helping them begin to envision what might be possible, and then putting together a roadmap on how they would do that with their own teams.
I think, so one thing that I've heard through the beginning of our conversation together is that workplace has been always a multi-stakeholder conversation. You might come from tech, you might come from legal, you might come from design, furniture, people and talent management. And so I'm really curious what I'm hearing. You said this word that really stuck with me, which is alignment. Mm-hmm. And so how do you build trust with these varied stakeholders to get them aligned on this one vision?
I think it's bringing them, well, if I can, even though I've been such a strong proponent of the virtual world, I just think that something very special happens when you can bring people together physically. And I oftentimes like to develop those stakeholder meetings, identifying who are those core people that will really provide that level of diversity. So whether it's the IT, or if it's HR, if it's the comms team, if it's the sustainability, to bring people together, educate them around what might be possible, and then just really allow them to bring forth different ideas or concerns, and not to gloss over some of the things that are really concerning to them. I think working through some of those together and collectively, I think really does begin to have them come together. And then again, that co-creation is huge. And it doesn't mean like the vision stays that way forever, but at least it gives them something that they can say that they were a part of. Because let's face it, nobody likes to have things done to them. They'd rather be a part of this. And so engagement at that point. And then I also find that these shared metrics, how is HR being measured? And what are the metrics that they have that connected to this program would help accelerate the work that they're doing? So are there ways that we can connect in to their own personal agendas and what success looks like for them as well? I think can also be a great way to tie that cohesion, because you can pull those metrics together. You can kind of really think through and use those as an opportunity to guide whether or not you're hitting your goals as you go through an engagement. And you all have been part of these different transformational projects. Sometimes they are done in 3 months, but many of them can go on it for a year or two. So you've also got to have the staying power to ensure that they are continuing, and it continues to evolve, and it's got momentum, and they're seeing the activity and making it worthwhile for their own contributions to pay off.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing as well is, well, each of them have their own work streams, helping them gain a sense of co-ownership, that they're part of the thread that weaves the story, is where kind of that magic happens. Is that right?
Yes, but they're also part of brainstorming and thinking through the solutions. And if we run into problems and it's not working, how can we come back and collectively? Because I do believe that there's such incredible power in with diverse teams. And by diversity, I think about it at the very highest level. Diversity of thought, the diversity of personalities, the diversity of experiences, in addition to their life experiences and who they are. But I think that utilizing them throughout, not just, at key moments, but really being able to have them be your champions so that they can take their own enthusiasm, their own stories, and bring that into the work that they're leading with their teams. So people that you may not be touching on large projects will hear that from others, and there's that consistency.
So what does that have to do with trust? Bringing together diverse teams and executing with all those different people and the thoughts. Why is that part of building trust? Or to you, how is that part of building trust?
I think it's because you're opening it up, and people see this process, right? Where you are bringing in people that will challenge the thinking, that will allow for you as a collective team or a group that's working collectively on a project to see how these different perspectives and ideas and nuances are going to be able to create a broader good. So I think part of it is that it allows for you to build that trust with the team, that it's not, an off the shelf, here's what this model is, but it's bespoke to us. And that they also feel that skin in the game because they are a part of that. And once they see other people coming in and doing something like that, that breeds itself. High performers, breed high performers. You sit by, if you want to become a high top performer, go sit by somebody that already is. That becomes a more, an easy way to be able to see how are they working through different issues? How are they developing trust with their teams? How are they communicating? How are they transparent with one another? So the diversity is a really important component in terms of just having a broad perspective on what might be possible and not limiting.
I wonder if you have any a quick tip or a hack or a saying that you use to prompt a client or a project team to consider who else they might need to bring in. Like if you're seeing that we have only one core team represented, like is there a trick that you can, not a trick, that's probably the wrong word, um, but something disarming that you could ask to
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that as you know, as we know, when you're leading the change management and those types of things, we've always looked at change ambassadors or change champions and things like that. And I'm working on a project right now where we are putting that group in place. So whilst we have, you know, a executive leadership team that we've been working with, and we've got a steering committee that's quite diverse, that we're also looking at how do we bring in now a deeper group of people that can also begin to take this process and this transformation and take it deeper into their networks and to be able to capture information and making it two-way. So a hack for me right now is just the beginning of introducing some of those whatever you call it, the change champions, etc. That's an easy way to be able to start weaving in other voices that makes it a broader opportunity to engage in, within the organization.
I love that. And then I'm curious because you've worked with such a diverse group of clients, right? Different industries, different levels of the organization. Is there any coaching that you would give typically to clients who are afraid of potential resistance? Like maybe the trust isn't there
Yeah.
and how to proceed.
Oh, yeah. We dive in deep into how people work as well, because if you just focus on where people will work, that's only one small portion of a transformation. You've got to get in there and really think differently and help managers, I think, start there around how do they lead teams that they don't always see? How do they establish that type of trust? And that is such a core component of it. So we work closely and have trainings that are rolled out with the managers so that they can really begin to think about how might they begin to apply some of these best practices in building trust within the team. How do they foster that inclusion and cohesion? I think one hack, another one in regards to that piece, is just having those teams develop their own norms and really ensuring that they are clear on how are they going to work together, how do they make decisions, how do they deal with conflict resolution, transparency, how do they provide equity, how are they going to collaborate, virtual, physical, but really allowing the teams to form them themselves and hold each other accountable for that. I think that can be an incredibly powerful way of establishing trust and ensuring that their teams feel heard so that it is something that the behaviors start to shift. And it's not so much about in, many people, many organizations struggle with, well, I want everybody back in the office because I don't know if they're getting their work done. I don't trust that they are. They may be doing more laundry or golfing or what have you. But if you're managing by result and people are very clear on what they're being held accountable and you have tools that allow for that transparency to come through, and they are managed by the result, not the time that you see them, that type of trust, it shifts everything. So managing by result, that's absolutely required, I think, in this day and age, and to stop feeling like it's going to be presence.
I think that that is so important, and I love that. So I'm gonna like maybe this might be a little I don't know how you can answer it, but in a world where I'm reading in the newspaper, like companies are starting to require their employ not starting, they have been over the past couple of years requiring more and more for their employees to come into the office. And you also talked about in the beginning that you felt that in person is creates a level of trust that virtual doesn't really create.
At
And
the very beginning.
in the very okay, well, yeah, and you just said that teams should create themselves their we always put together contracts for scope, schedule, and budget, but what we don't do when we start projects and start teams is put together how are we going to work together, which is really what you so eloquently defined just before as to what would be really important to cultivate trust. How do you work with the C-suite who's getting pressure from whether it's the municipalities or the public sector or their institutional building owners that are saying, get people in, we need people in the office. And from all of your work that once you develop this trust, it really doesn't matter where people work. It's about
That's
that
right.
result. It's about that deliverable.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas for
Yeah, I do. This is so
C-suite?
key. Yeah. You obviously hit a really hot spot for me because we have to ensure that these leaders understand what good looks like and their role in this. And oftentimes, I keep hearing that they think people are more productive when they're in the office. Nobody has any evidence or research that proves that that is the case. In fact, all the research that we collect shows that people are more productive when they're hybrid because they have choice, they have more autonomy, they've got their home where they can perhaps reduce more of the disruptions that they might have in the office to actually get some of that head down productivity work completed. So what I do is that pulse of where is that leadership team, and I meet with them one-on-one to really better understand where they are. How do they feel about distributed work? How are they working with their own teams and their own leadership? And do they embrace any of these best practices for leadership? I mean, it's so important as we think about wanting to get people back in to the office because we do know that there's value in being together. But oftentimes the C-suite thinks that it's about everybody else but themselves. And oftentimes the reason why people want to come back in is to be seen, especially by them. And they want to be heard. So helping them think about how they may shape their days so that they can be more visible and that they could be great champions for thinking through, especially if they're moving into more of an unassigned, activity-based environment where people have a lot of choice throughout the day. How might they use those different types of places and spaces? How might they use technology differently? All of those things are just so important, but I find that you have to get to those leaders, do kind of a check-in to see if they are open and willing to being coached or to really learning more about how they could shift some of those skills. Oftentimes I team up with organizational design experts and those that provide leadership coaching so that they can get even a deeper level in regards to it. But getting those leaders on board and understanding what good looks like, I think oftentimes can get them to the point of where they can make good decisions and articulate that to their shareholders and to their boards around the decisions that they've made. So yes, it's a really important component. Greet them where they are, find out where they are on that continuum, and develop a good strategy. And if they get to the point where they just don't want to play a role, that sends a message and a signal right away. But it can be done.
Definitely. I think you raise a really good point because not all organizations have the opportunity or the means to provide coaching and training for becoming a leader, becoming a people manager, how to best manage teams when they're distributed. And I think I'm going to tie it back to the beginning of our conversation. That's why communities such as we are so important, because we get to speak to our peers who are maybe in similar situations as us.
That's right.
Have those open conversations to say, well, what are you doing? What my organization is doing or my team is doing, but I need to learn a little bit broader than that. I need to be open to understanding what might be a better way. So again, I think it's cyclical. It comes back to community. It comes back to connection.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I also, to your first point, is that the cost of learning how to lead distributed teams or virtual teams or hybrid teams, whatever we call them, is nominal. I mean, we've got a full library that we've been updating and bringing forward. It's a commitment of maybe 45 minutes, and it's a course, and it's an online course that can be done by them, at their own leisure type of thing, and the cost is nominal. But then once they've gone through the course, bringing them together is really where the juice comes in. Like in terms of how would they begin to really apply that? Because what we find is leaders and managers go through that oftentimes policy may need to change as well, or technology might need to change, or they may need to find ways to bring in things that allow for higher levels of transparency. So the training is a commitment. And we're even doing some of these things now in videos, because if they don't have 40 minutes that they can spend on the manager course, then maybe we do it in just little 10-minute segments that they can capture an idea and learn from. But there's so much great work that's been done out there and best practices. I think it has to start with the desire of a manager to be a great leader during these times.
And then I think not only do the leaders trust each other, and they trust their employees, but then employees, as they make better and better decisions that are more relevant and co-created, and they felt heard, then the employees then begin to trust their leadership. You said something at the beginning, and you spent some time on it, and then we got away from it, and that was matrix. That you and your partner look at how to measure success. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of measuring success and trust within the organization, whether it's a volunteer organization or your client organization, or frankly, any organization? Like, what is that relationship between matrix and measuring and trust to you, or what have you found?
Sure. And I also want to come back to Chris's second question about the importance of community too.
Yep.
So just, Susan, addressing your question right now on the measurement, it's so important. And it's important to be able to do that early on when you set that vision, because people oftentimes don't know how to measure productivity. But we have found that you can absolutely get to a deeper understanding of what people do throughout the day. And that's actually kind of when they can be measured by those results that leads to the productivity gain that the organization will achieve. But I think that sometimes you've got to, with the metrics, is really understand what's most important to them. And sometimes starting projects right now, they just want to see more people in. So utilization becomes more of the metric, which I push back on a bit, because I don't think that it really showcases the value that those people can bring, because I do trust people that they are working from home, that they're going to do a good job. But if you need to be able to show that type of a utilization metric, that may drive a different type of strategy. It may be more about what can we do to create a workplace experience that would bring all those different people in, more of events type of thing, et cetera. I also think, and this kind of goes back to Chris, your question about the hack, is that if you have the ability to be able to allow for people to share, what's working for them, to your point, even with the community, what are those best practices? I love highlighting, great behavior, especially if it's coming from leadership or mid-level leadership, initially for people to see. This is, video clips of them just saying, this is how I used to think about this, and now we're working now this way. Or we used to think that having a private office was really going to be important. And now we've found that what's most important when we are in the office together, that we're collaborating, we're working on projects together, and the need for a private office may not be as intense. So whatever they're doing, but they're showcasing it, because it's that what you want to really highlight. And as you know, with any type of workplace change, having a strong communication team that can help bring forth some of this messaging and the great behavior, showcase, shine a light on some of these, that can help others begin to see what good looks like. Now, on your question in regards to the community and this sense of belonging, I'd have to say that has been one of the best pieces, the gifts that I've gleaned from We. For those that know about our mosh pits, that's a great way to get in quickly and be able to hear from others in a roundtable type of session, and to jump into the pit and talk about a problem that you're trying to solve and hear how others are being able to do it, and to build those relationships and continue to carry them on way outside of that event. But just knowing that you're not alone can be a big part of that solution, and to give people more of the courage to continue on doing what they're doing, and to be able to know where to go for help.
And why do people trust the mosh pit? Like, talk about why do they come? What does trust have to do with building that community?
I think that you have to be vulnerable to share, right? One of the reasons why we've created the mosh pits is that they're typically tables of around 8 to 10 people, so they're smaller, because we found that oftentimes people don't always want to raise that burning question or idea or thought if it's a large group. So by having them come together in a circle, if we can, that's the ideal situation, where they are guided through a discussion where we ask questions, and then everybody listens, and each person can be heard in that mosh pit. So they're sharing, they're vulnerable, they don't feel like they want to ask a question, and they'd be more comfortable. We always have posted notes, so if they're a real introvert, they'd prefer to write it down, that's great, we can capture it that way as well. So I think part of it is just in the power of the mosh pit and trust, is that you are sharing collectively with others, and you're also demonstrating those things that allow for people to feel heard. So deep listening, and reducing judgment, and being more open to other type of ideas. I think those all lead to better.
Yeah, one of the things that I really appreciate with the mosh pit is that they're not looking to create a group of people who just agree. It's not an echo chamber. What they are also encouraging is a difference of opinion.
Yes.
And the discourse around building understanding. This is why I don't agree with you. And we share, and it's not necessarily, it's not a debate. It's not a risk of getting targeted.
That's right.
And that's one thing that I really like. And the vulnerability, you're right. There are some, standard norms for that group as well, where we welcome everyone, and we.
Yes, that's right. So I think you're talking about the mosh pit that David and Jamal host. That's also, those are absolutely. I'm talking also about the mosh pits that we do throughout the globe, the more together type of thing, but they could also be done virtual like they're doing there. But having is the same concept as taking a topic and then allowing for people to share their thinking, no matter where they are, if they're for or against, but holding that space so that people can be heard, and that you can hear that discourse, but it's always respectful, and that you can better understand, and it's a safe place so that you can probe and if you're inquisitive about some of those different issues, it's a safe place to sharpen your saw and learn a little bit more, and maybe change the way you've been thinking about something.
You mentioned when you were talking about whether it's co-creating, deep listening, bringing diverse groups of people together, whether it's in a company or whether it's just industry leaders and colleagues coming together. You mentioned a word that has not come up this podcast, and that is judgment. And you just mentioned, talk about judgment as it relates to building trust, because all of this is about creating sacred space, working together, getting things to happen, measuring results. Where does judgment fit in to building trust?
I don't think judgment fits into building trust. I think we need to suspend judgment, and I think it can destroy it if there's high levels of judgment. So I think it just is, again, being very intentional, and holding others accountable. If people come with a really strong lens of what they think it should be, I think they can be heard, but I think it needs to also be a part of maybe the leader and others in that team to challenge it and to dissipate it, because I think the judgment, it's not working, is it? If we look at our world, it's not bringing us together. So I don't think I am not. I think the bringing judgment into trust. Um, I don't think that they're compatible. I think it's something that you have to be aware of, and just ask to suspend the judgment. Seek to understand. Suspend the judgment as much as you can.
And what have you ever been in a situation where you thought you had built trust and it didn't quite happen the way you were hoping?
Mm.
What we all are in those situations, right? Where we go in, we say the wrong thing, we pass judgment and we didn't really mean to, or, where somebody read our body language, or what do you do? Like, what have you experienced that works when trust has
Well,
been broken?
you take action. I think that's what you need to do, and just determine if it's something if that can be talked through, or if it's not going to work, cut your ties and move on. Try not to hold grudges and
And thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your insights on building trust when it relates to teams and clients and organizations. I know I learned a lot.
I
Chris,
do too as well, and we really, really appreciate you
oh,
sharing.
you're so welcome, and thank you so much for the opportunity, but also thank you for the work that you're leading. I know you guys are trying to figure out how to, you know, you've given so much to the world in just bringing trust up. It's just going to be, I would love to, I don't know what your vision is in terms of the business model for it, but it's a really important component. And thank you for the good work that you're doing to make sure that it's center stage.
Thank you.
thank you, Kate.
Keep it up, ladies. I love you both.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.